Thank you so much loh Pak Sandi.
Terima kasih Vince.
Waktunya hari ini. So we're very happy to have you here, and we want to learn from you, Pak, because you have done a lot of successful things, and then this is amazing, right? You've done successful in private sectors, and you've been successful in public sectors as well, in the government sector. So we want to learn from you today, and hopefully that the team can get inspired by the things that you did. So if I may have some questions, nilai hidup apa yang paling membentuk untuk perjalanan kehidupan Bapak?
I guess the values that I always bring is always entrepreneurial. So you mentioned that you're pretty tough on these guys here because you feel that they should do better.
Always.
Right?
So the challenger mindset.
Yeah, the challenger mindset. So, but for those of you here, I have to reveal to you because we deal with our portfolio companies. Time is tough. Ini lagi waktu yang susah-susahnya. Dan CEO yang nyebelin itu kadang-kadang nggak tahu bahwa kita lagi susah gitu ya. But I also put myself in your position and I always challenge. Karena sekarang kan ketidakpastian ada di mana-mana. The values that you ask is always that you want to achieve something even in the toughest situations. So my first entrepreneurial value is innovations, inovasi. Itu yang pertama. Jadi kalau ada kesulitan, ya you innovate, no? You try to overcome the situations that you have to you have to deal with. So inovasi itu ada di DNA setiap entrepreneur. So when I was in kementerian, DNA inovasi itu I brought in during COVID. Salah satu inovasi yang akhirnya juga I stumble upon, it's not like rocket scientist, tapi produk yang you guys also help, which is desa wisata. So when we had COVID, tourism was zero. So we stumbled upon desa wisata. Hey, this is a good product. This is a product that would comply to COVID protocol. So we developed through your help, through other people's help. Tadinya hanya ada 100-an desa wisata di seluruh Indonesia. And we saw this opportunity, we inject capabilities, and then we empower them. So from 200, today, we have 6,600 desa wisata across Indonesia. Six of them have made it to the UN Tourism Best Village.
Wow.
Kalau kita pikir biasanya pariwisata di desa itu kan yang terbentuk it's gonna be filthy, kotor dan lain sebagainya, jorok. Tapi we change the mindset through innovations. Now desa wisata terbersih di dunia itu ada di Indonesia.
Wow.
Desa wisata Penglipuran di Bali, di Bangli. Itu desa wisata dinobatkan menjadi desa wisata terbersih di dunia. Dan ada juga desa wisata yang menggunakan air sebagai kearifan lokal, desa wisata Jatiluwih di Bali juga. Ada 2 di Yogyakarta, itu yang menggunakan alam dan volcanic sort of like phenomena. Itu namanya desa wisata Ngelanggeran. So these are the type of innovations that we would need. Second, basically the true value that I brought in both during my private sector days and then public sector days, and now I'm back in private sectors, is you dare to take risk. which is in government, sometimes you are not incentivized to take risk.
Yeah.
Ngapain ngambil risiko? Kalau kita ngambil risiko, toh sama-sama aja, nggak ada bedanya. Kalau ngambil risiko justru berbahaya, karena bisa kehilangan pekerjaan kalau kita tidak bisa perform. So dare to take risk and adapt to it. Jadi value-nya adalah adaptasi and courage to take risk. So if there is trend, you adapt and you take risk. You adapt and then take risk. And then the third one, yang juga is something that I brought from private sectors and also I enhance in the public sector, is kolaborasi. Sometimes you are too ego-sectoral kan? You're too silo-minded thinking, especially in the large organizations like this. It's very difficult. Anything above 50 team members is you are starting to develop silo mentality. So kolaborasi itu breaking the silo mentality. My concept is always 360 collaborations. What have you collaborate today? What sort of like collaborative approach are you applying into your problem solving skills? Nah ini yang alhamdulillah all these three values I put together, and kolaborasi itu DNA-nya adalah proactivity. That you want to stay proactive. If you are in the group settings, you have to be the one making active, collaborative way to get the thing moving. Jadi kalau di breakdown itu 3, inovasi, adaptasi, dan kolaborasi.
Yeah.
And that's actually the entrepreneurial orientation. So you could be either in the government, you can be in private sectors like this, you can be in academia, you can be in media, you can be in communities, but kembali lagi ke 3 unsur tadi.
One thing, as a entrepreneurial startup company with a lot of this young generation, how old is our population age? 28, 29? 28-year-old on average. So we're very young company. But one thing that in a lot of our team, including some of the C-level here, where's Derek, usually have a reluctancy to deal with government. But when we want to do better for Indonesia, when we want to support in Indonesia, we cannot get away from the government, right? Especially given our scales. What advice do you have so that we can collaborate better with the government?
I used to be getting myself frustrated also. And I continue to be frustrated, even if I'm in the government and I'm outside the government. Tapi memang betul, nggak bisa kita 100% adopt that mindset. Oh, I don't want to touch. I want to stay on our own. Dimanapun kita persinggungannya ada sama government, terutama mengenai, especially you guys are in a heavily regulated industry.
Compliance, yeah.
Compliance dan lain sebagainya. Jadi buat saya pemerintah ini adalah mitra. So my concept is about public-private partnership. So when you think about partnership, udah gampang dari pertama bahwa di setiap partnership you have to take the pluses and the minuses. Kesulitan dan kemudahannya. Jadi dealing sama pemerintah itu, from my point of view, is that you adopt the right strategy. Siapapun pemerintahnya, you definitely have to support.
Yeah.
Tapi tentunya you could contribute in terms of making government. Ada 3 hal sih yang, okay, I mentioned to you what private sectors are good at, which is the entrepreneurial spirits, the innovations, the quickness. G yang pertama itu gercep. Nah, yang kedua G-nya, ini juga susah di pemerintahan, Saya bilangnya geber. Gerak bersama. If you wanna go fast, gercep, you go alone. But if you wanna go farther and more impactful, you go together. Jadi gerak bersama. Jadi hilangkan that silo mindset. Because you will think selalu if you wanna move, move together. Dan G yang ketiga ini yang saya tanamkan dari awal itu selalu di setiap opportunity saya menyebut G ketiganya itu gaspol. Gaspol. Singkatan dari garap semua potensi. Online dan offline.
Gaspol.
Nah, every single government, ministry dan lain sebagainya tergantung leadersnya. Dan leaders is basically determine how the DNA of the organizations would. So you have to understand the leaders, and you have to understand bagaimana that leaders approach issues that will help you deal with government. Tapi at the end of the day, when you partner with the government, you never go wrong.
What is it the government perceptions of technology companies like us, and how we can do better so that we can help the government, we can help our populations to actually achieve what the country set out to do?
I am probably the minority in the government that always berhusnuzon sama private sector, because not only I came from private sectors, tapi I believe that the way for us to be able to achieve Indonesia Emas 2045 to naik kelas dari sekarang emerging economies menjadi developed economies itu is when, and this is validated recently by McKinsey Global Institute report, is that 276,000 of those 64 million UMKM itu naik kelas. 276.000 angka. So angkanya ini crystal clear. They have to elevate to become a larger entities. And out of that, 4,000 has to be global company with global brand. Sekarang Indonesia, how many global brands there is or there are out of Indonesia? Coba. Ada yang mungkin berani ini? Ada nggak global brand yang you arrive di sesuatu negara di mana? Amerika, Eropa, Afrika itu ada brand dari Indonesia yang paling dikenal dunia. Oke. Betul, nomor 2. Nomor satunya Bali. That is the biggest brand that Indonesia have. Seluruh dunia tuh kita udah cek awareness-nya terhadap Bali itu it's some close to 80-90%. Indomie is right there. Tapi yang urutan 3-nya ada nggak? So you arrive New York, and you look around, ada nggak brand Indonesia? We're starting to struggle. Nggak ada yang bilang Kopiko, tapi aku suka nggak nemu tuh Kopiko kalau di 7-Eleven atau di mana. Nasi Padang have the potential. Rendang clearly has the potential. Rendang has the potential. You know what else have the potential? Nasi goreng. Since you guys are hungry. Actually ada 5. Nanti saya ketolak angin. Ada 5. Rendang is number 1, number 2 nya I remember by heart. 2 itu gado-gado. Karena kan kita harus sehat makannya. Gado-gado. Ketiganya itu betul nasi goreng. Menu di luar negeri itu kalau dilihat itu tulisannya nasi goreng bukan fried rice, bro.
Betul.
Nasi goreng. Nasi goreng Keempatnya itu sate ternyata.
Oh yeah, betul. That's true.
Sate.
ya.
Dan kelima, soto.
Soto.
Siapa tim soto nih?
Soto.
Nah, tapi itu struggle karena kita kalah sama the biggest culinary powerhouse in the world, definitely is America. Nomor 2 sekarang, ya French. Tapi nomor 3 salah, Chinese food.
Yeah.
Chinese food, baru Japan, baru India, and then the rest is Thai. Thai is very strong.
Yeah.
Thai food. Itu peluang-peluang kita nih. I'm laying.
Yeah.
So when the government look at people like Dana, you need to help us get there. To promote this 276,000 naik kelas, dan dari situ 4.000-nya menjadi global company. Nah, tolak angin, we have potentials. Sebetulnya bukan tolak angin aja, ada yang produk lain yang mereka yang punya namanya Kuku Bima. Kayak gitu-gitu tuh, herbal ya.
Yeah.
Wellness product kita punya kekuatan karena kayak spa, kalau kita ke spa di seluruh dunia, spa yang paling diminati adalah spa dari Bali. So itu beberapa pocket. Tapi kalau kita melihat dari 4.000 ini juga bisa, yang really go global itu adalah music. Musik apa dari kita yang paling punya peluang untuk go global? Dangdut. Bener. Koplo. Karena itu kalau kita promote well, and if Dana could support some of the dangduters go global, itu is an area that actually will improve our creative economy balance sheet. Terus film. Kita udah jadi tuan rumah di negeri sendiri film, guys.
Betul.
Waktu I took office, it was 50-50. Hollywood 50, kita 50. Sekarang udah 75-25.
Ya, itu.
Apa film Indonesia yang sanggup merajai dunia? Animasi Jumbo. Sore. Drama. Tapi yang benar-benar Indonesia itu mendapat pengakuan dunia adalah, kalau Korea adalah drakor, kalau kita drahor. Drama horor. But anyway, itu persepsi pemerintah, at least from the minority. Kalau kita, saya tuh nggak pernah, saya lihat dan teman-teman sebetulnya tergantung. Pak Prabowo juga sama saya melihat private sectors, karena saya spend 10 years with him, mulai dari his jubir sampai terakhir di 2019 jadi running mates. He also sees, because he's an entrepreneur also, bahwa corporates have a certain role buat kita develop this strength and growth rate of our economy, supaya kita nyampe tuh di angka develop economies by 2045. Jangan kita yang kemarin nih, that late January, 28 Januari kan kita ditakut-takutin. We're going to be downgraded. Not from emerging economies to developed economies, tapi emerging economies to frontier economies. Itu mesti kita sama-sama bergandengan tangan, private, public, to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, agree.
Sebetulnya entrepreneur itu thrive. One of the which they could thrive is when the government would not be in the positions or would not be able to solve what the people need. Jadi, I've done surveys across the archipelago during my political days and pre-political days, and even now, post-political days, that currently yang dibutuhkan oleh rakyat Indonesia yang belum bisa disolve sama pemerintah apa? Ini nomor 1 sama nomor 2 terus-terusan berganti-ganti. Macet.
Oh,
Salah.
bukan dong.
No macet. buat DKI ya, kalau buat Indonesia macet nggak ada sama sekali.
Betul.
Kan you guys are
Ya, ya. Ya.
national and global company. Buat Jakarta macet nomor 7.
Ya.
Banjir nomor 9.
Kan, ya.
Only less than 12% of Jakartans harus berurusan dengan banjir.
Let's talk about literacy. Literacy?
Literacy, pendidikan ya.
Ya, pendidikan.
Pendidikan top 5. Oke, pendidikan. Listrik, infrastruktur dan lain sebagainya nomor 6. Energi itu masuk ke listrik. Yes. Jobs. Pemerintah per hari ini, siapa tuh yang bilang jobs? Oke. Diharapkan leaders in the government would enable, karena pemerintah tuh nggak bisa menciptakan lapangan kerja by itself. It needs the private sectors. So they need the conducive environment so that jobs, good quality jobs ya, bukan marginal jobs, bukan any kind of jobs, but good quality jobs are being created. Jadi itu yang pertama. Tapi yang nomor 2, ini sekarang per hari ini, apalagi bulan Ramadan, I'm watching the data very closely. You're data driven, yaitu
Pangan.
betul banget. Not only pangan, udah melebar, cost of living. Makanya si Zohran Mamdani terpilih kemarin. His number 1 agenda cuma satu, yaitu affordability. Is very Gen Z related and relevant. Is how could I continue to afford living in Jakarta? How could I afford myself paying rent, paying tuitions kalau yang masih sekolah malam, paying my healthcare bills, dan lain sebagainya. Nah itu government belum bisa solve per hari ini. Nah, a company like Dana, actually I look at the metrics, you would be able to bring down the transaction cost.
Yeah.
You would be able to bring down cost of doing business.
Yeah.
You could actually transform this 64 million to be financial literate. Dan kalau kita ngomong UMKM, selalu kita tanyakan, number 1, itu survei juga berbasis data driven. Kira-kira UMKM kita tuh butuh apa? Modal? No. Skill. Nomor 1 skill. That Dana can do as part of your offerings. And then you can onboard them. Yang kedua, bukan modal, tapi tadi ada yang ngomong, pasar, access to market. Jadi selalu pelatihan, pemasaran, dan baru terakhir permodalan. So that's how data is guiding you. How you should be able, for a company like you, when you want to disrupt something, that is the metrics that you need to disrupt.
Yeah.
How you could create good quality jobs, and the best creator of jobs are usaha kecil, usaha besar, atau usaha menengah.
Usaha kecil.
Usaha kecil. Karena 97% of
dan
jobs are created by usaha kecil.
Betul.
So usaha besar itu hanya less than 5%.
Yeah.
Jadi those are the disruptions. And another one that you would be able to disrupt, and this is, you would love this, bahwa out of all these 64 million UMKM, angka terakhir untuk permodalan yang sudah di-solve oleh ecosystem itu cuma less than 30%. 70% are still not touched by any kind of product. Makanya kalau ada yang kasih produk buat UMKM yang and I think clarity and simplicity are now the keys and priorities. Jadi kalau punya produk yang clear, very, it's so glaring, clear, that produknya itu membantu dia pendanaan, and simple, that's a winning product.
Yeah. Completely agree with you, Pak Sandi. In our case, we actually go the same ranking. We start with onboarding dulu, karena itu yang key-nya. How to digitalize the merchant. Karena kalau mereka udah digitalize the merchants, then it's easier to train them, it's easier to reach out to them, it's easier to drive traffic to them. Kita jadi mulai dari onboarding dulu, terus kedua pemasaran dulu, baru terakhir pemodalan. Kenapa? Kalau kita taruh pemodal di bawah, nggak bisa bayar. Nggak bisa bayar. Justru itu, kita selalu concernnya itu di semua startup fintech, kita paling terakhir untuk masuk ke itu, ke pembiayaan. Karena kita melihat harus ada datanya dulu, harus ada behavior dulu, baru kita bisa memberikan sesuatu yang fair, yang measurable. Kalau kita mulai dari situ, wah, nanti takutnya terjebak. So, thank you so much Pak for the advice.
You mention, ini Andrew bagus banget pertanyaannya. You guys mention tadi Indomie itu udah terbukti. Kita kudos kepada Salim Group. Kita udah buktikan kita bisa. Tapi menurut saya selain daripada creative and cultural, and we're a powerhouse lah kalau bicara mengenai cultural based economies, creative economy kita powerhouse, kita nomor 3 di dunia. Itu kalahnya cuma nama Amerika sama Korea dari segi kontribusi terhadap GDP. Tapi saya ngelihatnya itu banyak banget peluangnya perusahaan kita yang bisa ke sana gitu. Selama kita bisa memfasilitasi. Misalnya, saya baru pulang dari Guangzhou sama Shenzhen kemarin, sebelum Xinjiang ya. Orang pada ngantri. Ngantri apa ternyata? Ada yang bisa tahu? Lagi ngantri beli gelang emas, bro.
Oh.
Gelang emas itu perusahaan Hong Kong tuh.
Oh, okay.
Longhok atau apa gitu. Orang ngantri di Guangzhou, di Shenzhen semua, di Pasai di Hong Kong juga pada ngantri, dan itu ngantrinya lebih panjang daripada yang ngantri branded goods yang lainnya. Nah, kita ini kan penghasil emas. Kita ini stop di cuman bikin lempengan emas saja. And some of the companies that I started also juga berhenti di situ. So I challenge. Kebetulan I have about network of 600,000 entrepreneurs di bawah gerakan OKOC. Itu juga dulu I was thinking, karena janji politik kan waktu itu maju di Pilgub, saya lihat gimana caranya menciptakan lapangan kerja yang paling benar. Ya melalui UMKM, karena UMKM itu 97%. Gimana caranya government menggagas program ini? Ya beri tadi itu, exactly what you said. Kita buatnya di OKOC itu 7 langkah. Pertama skill, jadi dia harus pendaftaran dulu, harus ikut pelatihan, nggak boleh minjem duit sebelum pelatihan. Pokoknya dia pelatihan dulu, setelah itu dia harus ikut skill pemasarannya, setelah itu dia benerin dulu financial statementnya, setelah itu itu ada beberapa pengusaha kita, udah gede-gede bisnisnya bro, udah 3-4 miliar revenue-nya per bulan, belum terdigitalisasi, masih sangat tradisional gitu, itu kan low hanging fruits, itu dia 50 miliar easy revenue per year. Nah, saya challenge nih si OKOC ini. Saya bilang, kenapa sih kok kita nggak punya perusahaan jewelry yang berbasis misalnya yang natural, yang kita punya natural resources, salah satunya emas.
Betul.
Kita kan punya emas, kita punya berlian yang ada di, kita jualnya semua raw. Nggak ada yang go to the finished process. I foresee kalau kita serius ngerjain Andrew, ada 2-3 perusahaan emas kelas dunia yang menghasilkan yang paling tinggi nilai tambahnya tuh bukan tambang emas, tapi that jewelry products. Karena nilainya bisa 2-3 kali lipat. Through our creativity, through our craftsmanship. Kalau ke Bali lihat produk-produk pengrajin di sana itu sangat luar biasa. Jadi saya tuh kalau kita bicara hilirisasi in a certain way, kadang-kadang kita bicara hilirisasi yang hanya mentok di certain area saja, nggak sampai ke all the way to the end. Makanya saya bilang untuk nyampe, my advice is kepada para entrepreneur ini adalah etos kerja 4As. Pertama, you wanna be successful, kerja keras. Nggak ada instan cuan. Forget it, saya bilang. It's one in a billion that you become successful, nyantai-nyantai nggak ada unless you inherit it, right? So, as yang kedua, kerja cerdas, gunakan AI, gunakan teknologi terkini, gunakan dana. If you're UMKM, why don't you be in their ecosystems? Nah, yang ketiga, kerja tuntas. Ini yang nggak kelar-kelar nih. Kita belum selesai, kita udah ganti subjek. Sama kayak netizen kita gitu. Hari ini baru lagi ngebahas isu ini loh. Kita lagi mau solve isu ini, tiba-tiba besok udah loncat ke isu yang lain gitu. Dan as yang terakhir saya bilang adalah setelah kerja keras, kerja cerdas, kerja tuntas, itu kerja ikhlas. With that, etos kerja, I think we could generate this 4,000 companies, and I hope one of those company would be Dana.
Thank you, Pak.
Global company.
Terima kasih banyak loh Pak.
Terima
Randi.
kasih.